Shadows creep around us, silent whispers call. In the dark we wander, lost within it all. My air is heavy, breaths that freeze the soul. Echoes in the distance, stories left untold. Whispers of the night, drawing near and tight. Secrets in the shadows, hidden from the light.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 of our conversation with Ricardo about Dogman.
Chords has to be designed the same way.
Right.
Hence why I say genotype, they're more cat. And they do a lot of things. Tigers, after they eat at nighttime, where will you find them afterwards? At the river. Bathing themselves or just whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? How do you find a dogman? After they eat, where they go? Towards the water source. Now, what I'm not going to say on air is at what time this happens, normally happens, right? And what vocalizations to do to get them to you. That I won't say.
Right, I don't blame you on that one.
But that behavior is seen in tigers. There's a lot of other behaviors that tigers do, specifically tigers, and some other cats, but tigers, I use tigers in general as a reference point, do that Dogman also does. Right? That dogs can't do because their vocals are not designed that way.
Correct.
So there's a lot of different things which makes more sense to me throughout the years when that hit, because an eyewitness said something to me, and then when she said it, it's like, oh my Lord, no wonder, right? Because that's what I do. Everything has always been under the sun, meaning if one animal does it, another animal from the same genotype will also do it. So why do they do this or why do they do that? Well, if you look at other animals, they normally have the same behaviors. And when that eyewitness said something, my first thing in my mind is, wait. Dogs can't do that. And when I went to look at other behaviors throughout the years, and I put them side by side with big cats, holy crap! No wonder. Okay, now it makes sense why they do this or why they do that, or how can they do this or how can they do that between things, right? Because genetically, they're not dogs. And I know that's harder to understand unless you've collected a lot of information.
Right.
And it's interesting. But they howl like dogs. They howl like wolves, right? They do these, but have you ever heard a tiger moo like a cow?
They have a lot of different calls and sounds that they make, actually.
Right. Tigers, actually, animals. The blue jay sounds like a red-tailed hawk.
Uh-huh.
Right? When they get killed, they sound like that to make other predators leave, but if there's the red-tailed hawk around, they realize, wait a minute, you're not one of us, and it just goes bad for them. But a lot of animals mimic other animals, other vocalizations for their benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Tigers do it a lot to bring the other animals to them. to make hunting easier. Okay, so they'll do calls, but if they're with cows, they'll start moving like cows. If they're they call they make wild boar calls. They even are able to make the calls. They understand when mating season is and the noises that certain animals make, and make those noises in tune with the mating season to make sure that the other animals come to them. Right?
Yep. Yep. I see
Dogman
where you're
does
going.
Dogman does the same thing. So if you have a Dogman pack or clan, the way I call them, living within coyotes, dogs, wolves, what do you think they're going to vocalize as?
I would definitely vocalize as the coyotes, the wolves, the dogs, because those are easy targets to pull in.
No, not only that, you want to mix with your surroundings.
Mm-hmm.
And because you're in that area and that's mostly what you hear, well, guess what? That's what I'm going to sound like.
Yep. Yep.
Right? Because that's what.
Yeah, I was going to say, which can serve two purposes. Not only are you easier, to be able to pull in, a prey item that you could use, because obviously you're a bigger and stronger predator than the coyotes or whatever. But not only that, but you'll also eliminate another predator that you're having to work against or compete with.
Right. Right. But it also serves to fool you at your property.
Right.
And I'll explain how in the beginning at my property, they were trying to fool me until I realized something. So every night, the first time I really understood that there was a dogman in the property, it was making this bird type noise. It was I had let my dog go to use the bathroom, and at once he used the bathroom, I put him back in his crate, which was under a canopy. This is when we first bought the property, and this, like I said, bird type noise came out, and my dog went ballistic. He went nuts at that noise, which is weird because for me it was a bird noise. But why are you going nuts to a bird noise? Right, this is a dog that's fully socialized, fully non-problem with anything, and he went off like he was about to kill something. And I'm like, but then when the dog did that, what I heard was the bird sound mad, and it ran down towards the creek so damn fast, it's your head just spun towards the left really fast. And I'm like, oh crap, great, right? Because we just bought the property, and this thing was like a couple yards from me. But we left it at that. But through the months that passed, at nighttime, I would hear these birds chirping. And sometimes I would hear these bird chirpings at midnight, at 1 o'clock in the morning. And then one day I realized it was, I don't know, probably 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm walking down my long driveway, and I'm hearing the same birds. And I see the birds as a little finch. And I'm like, I'm walking along, two little birds, and I'm walking, whoa. If you're up at 6:30 to 7, that means you should be roosted and perched at midnight, not flying around and making these same noises. So who's making the same noises at midnight? It ain't the birds. It was the cryptids inside my property, mimicking their surroundings to fool, in this case, me, from not understanding that they were around. So that's where they fool people, and people will say, well, I've never, heard them prior, heard them before. They only hear when something bad happens or there's a change in the environment, because now they come out. Putting aside the fact that I want to be stealthy because I'm dealing with something. But this mimicking of noises happens with, other animals as well. It's nothing new. in the animal world. It's just they're smart, so they'll use it for their advantages.
Yep, yep. We've seen that quite a bit actually. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I gotta give you credit where credit is due. You've really put in the field research, and it looks like you're kind of headed in the same direction where I am, where I'm looking at basically behavioral profiling, or however you want to put it. But very good work, very good work. I've got a bunch of questions if you feel like you're up for it.
No, go for it.
Okay. All right. Let's start off with there was a couple of references to the hyena. So a lot of people want to call these things dogman, and we talked about phenotypical and genotypical traits. Would you say that these things are closer related to a hyena, or?
If there's any animal that I would say they're mostly related to is cat. What they are. One thing that I've never done is looked into history, and and I have my own theories about them, right? Again, they're theories. I don't normally talk about them, about my thoughts when it comes to that. But if I were to say, they're more cat than anything.
Okay.
Can they have other? Because I've heard the hyena call, and it starts off like a loon. You know what a loon is?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it starts off like a loon, and it finishes off in a hyena cackle,
Right.
which is the laugh. And that's how it starts. It starts off as a loon, and then it just cackles off into that hyena type noises. Where they get that noise, if it's hyena DNA in them or whatever, it's abundant and very clear to me that regardless of the so-called types, they all do it. Some people will say, and I had this argument with a lady on Facebook once, because she was saying that she was very close to them and whatnot, which I didn't believe. So I asked her, "Have you heard this hyena call?" In her mind, she says, "Well, these aren't hyena types; these are wolf types." And so the minute she said that, in my mind, right, for me, then I knew what she was saying wasn't correct about her being close to them, because Wisconsin, we're all wolf types. If you were to put a type to them, but yet I've heard that cackle with them multiple times, right? And I've heard the same cackle in other states with different types and different looks. So it's not a, well, that's a hyena type because it has the spots or whatever, so he makes that noise. No, they all do the same noise, right? In every state, all the vocalizations that I've ever heard are all the same. I've held people in foreign countries telling them or giving them vocalizations to help them understand their dogman, and it's a different type. So right. for me, closely resembling genetically, I would say cat.
Okay. That's interesting. I like that. Since we're on the subject of types, how do you feel about that whole thing about types?
For me, my research, I got two types. Right? For me, I only got two types. The one looks more like the Van Helsing type,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is more animalistic, more, more. I'm going to use the word animalistic. It has probably a larger hump. It's more hunched over, bent over, if you want to call it that. Again, more animalistic versus the Van Helsing. Stands up more tall, more straighter, less of a hump on it, and whatnot. So those are the two types. But if you look at descriptions of a dogman from different podcasts and just change the color, the outline and the figure is the same.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
Most people will describe a hyena type, for example, I'll take that, as having a big hump on it, crouched over, the back legs are shorter, the front legs are longer, right? And whatnot. And then obviously it has the brown and black spots. But if you listen to some eyewitnesses talk about their encounter, they'll have the same description, except their hyena is black.
Yep.
So color does it for me, my research, right? Because I'm not gonna, say that I'm correct on everything. Because I'm not, right? This is no one's an expert on this. Right? I'm giving you my opinion.
Yeah.
For me, I only have two types because color does not dictate a type. I can be pink and purple, but if my outline is the same outline as a black animal, then I guess I'm the same type,
Right. You're
right?
looking at anatomy or morphology rather than trying to.
Color,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially when they all make the same vocalizations.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
Um,
for me, it's so two types.
right. So you hear a lot of talk about the torso being like a bodybuilder or whatever. Have you run into that, or is it more canid like, or what are we looking at as far as what you've seen?
So again, this has to do with genetics for me. My thought is genetic. That's to do with genetics and age. They tend to continue to be or get heavier as they age. So since you have dogs, we know that if you look at large breeds, right, like mastiffs, right,
Yep.
mastiffs when they're smaller, they're a certain size. When they mature, they tend to do a certain weight, and then when they're older and they slow down more, they tend to gain or become bigger. Their heads become bigger. Their bodies become heavier. Um, Same thing with like American bulldogs or just bulldogs in general. As they age, they become heavier. Um, so younger pups are tend to be more leaner, um, still muscular like a track star, but leaner with bigger hands, bigger paws, bigger head because they haven't grown into them yet. Versus an old fella who's probably more hunched over than when he was three, right, and a lot heavier and filled in. Um, I've seen some pictures of some that are very leggy, right, which their paws and feet are not big, so I'm assuming it's fully grown. Um, but for the most part, and again, um, they do not look like you see them pictured with these bodybuilder type muscles, right?
Right.
The musculature you're looking at. I'm going to say probably an ape, gorilla, chimpanzee, with a canine type head on top of them. The head again will also, depending on your environment, your niches, will have different structures to them. Some will have taller ears. Some will have shorter ears. Some of them will have larger cheek muscles. Some of them will have smaller cheek muscles. But um, they're not like what people draw when they draw a bodybuilder body with a canine head. Their muscularity is like more like an ape. Um,
So
that's like,
you're looking at muscles that are actually being used
oh yeah,
as opposed to somebody who goes into the gym and is trying to build up their lats and their everything. They're actually like you're talking about with a chimpanzee and a gorilla, where they're so much stronger than us because one, there's genetics and all of that involved in it, but also the tensile strength of the muscles is different because they're used in a
Right.
different way.
Right. Yes.
Yep.
And sure, they're going to be bigger than ours, right?
Exactly.
Or at least your average Joe. Um, but the design to them, like you said, is different because all their muscles are being used.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
that's why when some people draw things, I'm like, yeah, he's probably just drawing what he sees on TV and just adds
Yeah. Yeah.
certain things to it.
So you mentioned the hands and the tracks. With the hands or the front paws, however you want to put it, are we seeing more like a human's paw, or are we looking at something more like a raccoon, or what are we looking at?
Okay, so you ask any eyewitness, right? And this is something that I've asked just because, right? Since I once you see, you're able to ask those particular questions. And this is why sometimes I don't like coming on, podcasts a lot
Right.
because a lot of the information that people take it and they use it to make their own stories. But
Exactly. I understand where you're coming from with that.
so if you ask a true eyewitness, and again, so I know somebody will say is if you ask anybody, they'll say it, but those who haven't will probably now start saying this. They look like squirrel hands.
Okay. Yeah.
Once you tell an eyewitness squirrel hands, there's a pause. Oh yeah, because that's what their hands kind of look like, squirrel hands.
Mm-hmm.
Then their thumb is higher up, not down like a human. Um, it's more like an ape type, higher up on the arm. But when they place their paws on the floor, they kind of tighten their knuckles, so they don't just flat out their hands on the floor. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Uh,
It does. Yeah.
so the front paws on tracks looks different from the back paws.
Which
Then
would
the
make
back paw,
sense. Yeah.
right? So the back paws also has a variation, and because it also depends on what they're doing. If they're on
Correct.
all fours, if they're standing, if they're on their hocks, like some dogs. If their hocks are longer or shorter, some dogmen have longer hocks, some dogmen have shorter hocks. And then the hocks is from the paw to the first bent joint.
Yep.
Um, so it depends on how the length is that, how it hits the floor. Um, so depending on the position is depending on what the track you have on the floor. But their front paws tend to look different from their rear paws. And then when you see a dogman paw on the floor, there's going to be slight distinction. They tend to be more rounded, both front and back. Depending on age, again, the older they get, the more rounder the paw. Why? Because the heavier they get, the more the paw or the print becomes rounded, like a big cat's,
Right.
because of the weight.
Exactly. Which would
And
change
then,
whether they're bipedal or quadrupedal.
right,
Okay.
right.
That makes perfect sense. Um, let me see here. We went over that. Okay, so we hear about the red eyes a whole lot. These eyes, either, there's an argument between eye shine and self-illuminating eyes. What is your take on that?
Red eye shines.
Yep.
It's simply a added blood flow to the capillaries of the eyes. So if you have any cryptid, rather it be a Bigfoot, rather it be a dogman, with red eyes, understand that this dogman or cryptid was running, fighting, hunting, or just got out of a fight. Because there's added blood flow to the capillaries, it reflects back as red because of the added blood flow to the capillaries. So when I see red eye shining in the woods, 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot tall, I leave because I don't know what caused the added blood flow.
Makes sense. Makes
Because
sense.
because
Yeah.
if he was hunting, they tend to be very food possessive or resource guarders.
Right.
So if he's getting mad because I'm close to a kill that I didn't know it was there, but now the dogman comes out because hey buddy, there's a I just hunted this. Well, I'm in danger, so out I go. If he was just running from far away towards me because he was just fighting on the dogman, he was fighting with a Bigfoot or whatever. Well, he's not a happy camper right now. So see you later. Hasta luego.
Hmm.
But that's all that is just added blood flow to the capillaries. So they reflect red. And this is with every animal.
Right.
Every
Right.
it's just and when you understand the reasoning for why there's added blood flow, because you don't need to know which one of these caused the blood flow. You just have to analyze. Okay, blood flow to the eyes, capillaries. These might be the things. It allows you to make the proper decision, which is to leave the area which keeps you safe.
Yep. I agree. I agree completely. So most predators are generally active nocturnally rather than diurnally. I mean, they will be both, but are we seeing that these things are more active nocturnally?
They're more active um, from sundown and sunrise. So yes, I would say nocturnally, um,
Okay.
but you will. They have no problems waking their butts up and confronting you and showing you out the door, even if it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right, right. I mean, as far as if
But
they're
they're
under
more.
normal conditions,
They're
they're
they're they're slumbering. They're under a tree stump. They're in a den or on top of a tree perched.
right, right. We see a lot of reports coming around from areas where there's cornfields. Now, if somebody were to ask me, I would say, well, that's because your prey items are around the cornfields, deer and things like that. Is that what you're seeing?
So they love field corn. They actually eat the field corn.
Aha, okay.
They're omnivores. They're not carnivores.
All right, so they're not obligate carnivores, they're more omnivorous.
No, they're right. They'll eat, fruits and vegetables, watermelons, but they love corn. That's one of the things that I noticed when I was in Wisconsin, that the top of the stock where the corn was at were being broken off, and then I began to ask multiple eyewitnesses and mostly landowners, and everyone confirmed that yes, they liked the corn. Including we had one eyewitness in Illinois that saw one putting a whole bunch of them under his arm and running off. The lady called it a grizzly bear. Yeah, the lady said a grizzly bear came out of the woods, grabbed a whole bunch of corn, put it under his armpits, and then walked away. Like, well, okay, it's not no grizzly, that's for sure.
Yeah, Yogi Bear just came out there and
Yeah,
got
yeah.
the corn. We're
So,
also seeing them around marshes too, marshes and swamps. Any ideas on that?
so, and to finish off with the corn,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, it's just two seconds. I believe they get there for the corn, but then take advantage of the fact that the deer are there as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. It
Right.
positively.
So it doesn't mean that they go there strictly for the deer. I believe they go there for the corn because a lot of places, especially when like Halloween, people put pumpkins out. Those get stolen as well. So they go for the fruits and vegetables to pack up calories, And then it just happens that the deer are also there. So okay, buffet. You know. Now you were referring. You just asked about. You just asked me a question.
Oh yeah, about marshes and swamps.
Okay, every animal needs to drink water.
Hmm.
Okay. If you know anything about uh, first responders or just in general, health, to lower your body temperature, what are the things that you should cool down?
Yeah, water. Yeah,
No, but your feet, your body parts.
yeah,
You know, put water on your neck, right? But your paws or your feet are the first go to. So if you're having a heat stroke, normally they'll take out, your shoes and your socks.
yeah. Exactly.
Right. So if I'm a large animal, besides having the fact to need water, if I'm a large muscled animal, I'm going to need to cool off my body because the more I do, the hotter I'm going to get. And what is the fastest way to cool myself is to put my feet in water or in cold water.
Hmm.
So being next to water serves a two purpose. One, drinking, and two, cooling myself off, especially in the summertime. Hence, you get the dog wet smell, even from Bigfoots.
Right. Yep. I would agree with that, and especially knowing if their if their physiology works anything like any canid or most carnivores or whatever, there's a lot of issues with being able to disperse that heat. And, like a dog will pant to try and
Right.
let out the heat and everything. And they actually do perspire through their paws. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Dens.
Mhm.
Um, are they like coyotes and wolves? They're digging out their own dens or roughing up, other animals' dens? Are they using caves? What are we looking at with dens?
So they'll use whatever the environment gives them, right? So if there's a bear den already made, they're going to use that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, their den is normally, I don't even want to say it online because I know people will start looking for these things.
if
Um,
you if you don't feel comfortable telling
but
anything that has to do with your research, don't. I
hold
understand completely where you're
on,
coming from.
1 second here. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So um, their dens kind of look like uh, mounds. As much as that's as much as I can say without going too much into details.
Right.
Um, they'll tend to do them in specific areas. And again, I don't want to go into details where that area is
Yeah.
because then you'll have every John Doe going to those areas to find out.
Yeah, that's true.
But there's specific areas where they tend to make them, and if they're not making them themselves, they will use other animals already made den. They'll kick them out, maybe make them larger for themselves. But like cats, if their heads fit, their bodies fit.
Good enough. Good enough right there. You don't have to go into any more detail. I understand exactly what you're saying about leaking out a little bit too much info on all that stuff, because we don't want people thinking that they've got all the answers and all the info and they can go out there and get themselves in a whole lot of trouble, or
Right.
construct a story based on what we're talking about right here to try and convince you, me, anybody else that, oh well, I know all the details. So yeah.
Yeah. And again, the stuff that I'm giving you are basic knowledge.
Right.
There's tons of more stuff, but your average Joe on the internet does not know your basic knowledge.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know.
Let me see here. Oh yeah, I had a question myself We're always hearing about things like the sound of laughter or of children or children in the forest. Is that tied in with, do you feel like that's tied in with them and with their cubs, maybe?
Yeah. Remember when we were talking about the tigers mimicking their surroundings?
Exactly.
So if a dog man lives, and we touched about that a lot of their dens are near their eyewitnesses' homes.
Right.
Most of these eyewitnesses have kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they have kids and they're imitating their surroundings, what do you think is going to happen?
Exactly. They're gonna take that as something else that they can imitate.
Right. And what do kids normally do when they hear laughter?
Oh yeah, they look for it. They're
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that they're trying to hunt the kid down. It just means that for the most part, right? And again, when I talk to an eyewitness, I give 1,000 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no such thing as, oh yeah, just do this. There isn't. I have to talk to you as if I'm doing an investigation, right? I go back to my roots as a correctional officer, and I ask you 1,000 questions before I can even begin to start giving you what you need to do for something. But most kids are attracted to other kids laughing. So if there's pups around, well, it's going to be logical for them to start laughing. Because they know that's what attracts the other kids.
Mm-hmm.
And they're curious. They want to, play whatever. And even the adults, if they're living in an area where you have kids laughing or, whatever other noises that you might think about, they will also mimic them. I know one that would mimic kids' laughter, like you said, because it happens a lot, right? But I specifically know of one that I can talk about for a lot, and I won't out of respect, but they'll mimic kids just for the sake of mimicking. They mimic a lot.
Yeah.
Like again, and the problem with social media is that everything they do is seemed as dangerous or evil or whatnot, and a lot of times it's just curiosity, just because they live in a certain area, so they will do certain things that are resemblance to their surroundings.
What would you say to this question has started popping up past few years, actually quite popped up for a long time with Bigfoot. How do you feel about the paranormal aspects that are usually brought up with Dogman?
So Linda Godfrey said it best, right? Linda Godfrey said that Dogman is one of three things: a biological entity,
mm-hmm.
a demonic spirit, or somebody's figment imagination.
Okay.
There are people which, again, because I asked a lot of questions and I know a lot of background information because of the research, I can tell you that I have run into people who every sound in the forest is a Dogman.
Yeah.
And when you get there, or when you ask the questions, you realize, my goodness, this person is crazy.
Yeah.
Because nothing adds up, and when you get there, you realize that it's something else, and whatnot. Now, Linda Godfrey also has said that they're demonic creatures, right? Because they're one of three things. I have had cases where the person's lifestyle has created the appearance of an entity.
Right.
So what happens is the entity likes to use people's fears.
Yeah.
So the Dogman comes to the property because you've been having, things appear on you. Mm-hmm. So that causes you stress, causes you anxiety, right?
Yep.
That anxiety, that stress causes problems in the family. All that causes the dogman to come to your house. The spirit or the entity now realizes that not only you're scared of the dogman, so it synchronizes its appearance with the the approach of the dogman.
Mm-hmm.
So in your mind, they're both linked because they both happen at the same time.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's just the spirit taking advantage of something that you already are scared of.
Yep.
I've had multiple cases just like this, where the last result is that the dogman has left, and me telling the eyewitnesses, that's all I can help you in, because I do not deal with spirits.
Right. That parallels a lot of what I've been talking about for a while. And I think a lot of people have been, is that there's a couple of things that are happening simultaneously. We're seeing this with Bigfoot too, where you have a much more biological entity that, you call it an ape, call it a human, whatever you want to call it, whatever Sasquatch is, that's traveling around through the forest. And then there's what we refer to, or as I refer to, as the other. Now you can lump that in with, spirits or the fae or trolls or whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And it just like what you said, it can assume different personas, and it can, use that terror that you have in that thing, that creature, and accomplish what it wants to do, because just like you said, it knows what terrifies you and what you're afraid of.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, I think in a lot of ways you and I are very much on the same page here. Okay, so since I threw you under the bus on that one, I'm gonna throw you under the bus on this, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. The LBL, how do you feel about that?
Okay. So the LBL, well, I like talking about these stuff because a lot of people have never been into my brain.
Right.
So when you ask these questions, the audience gets a different perspective that they've never heard before.
Right.
Right. And later on, if you haven't, if you weren't going to ask me this, I would like to give you my perspective of when it comes to Dogman being here since the beginning of time.
Yes. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
so if you're going to ask me that later on, I can give people my perspective on that one. So
that's
the LBL,
all I can ask for is your perspective on everything.
So the LBL is interesting to me. The first sketch that was ever done on the so-called beast of the LBL that was done out of an eyewitness account of that night or the day before or the day after, I don't know, right? But of that night, somebody came forward, and there's an artist, which is known in the community, drew what that person saw.
Right.
What that drawing is not a dogman.
Okay.
And that drawing, you find it if you Google it, you'll find the drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the drawing, for anybody who's seen a dogman, knows that that's not a dogman. Dogman do not look like that.
Right.
Right? So, do I believe in the massacre? Probably, yes. Most likely, right?
Okay.
Do I believe it was a dogman? No, I don't believe it was a dogman. Was it a cryptid? Yes. Right?
Mm-hmm.
What type of cryptid? I don't know. It could have probably been a gugwe, for what I know.
Right.
And gugwees travel in twos, as far as I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I say that based on researchers that I confide in.
Right.
Right. But I can't say they travel on two, because there's another person that I talked to who has a drawing out there, and they also have quite a few can be in a clan, in a family unit, but they don't travel as Dogman do 5 or 6 at a time. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So, but what was it? A dogman, according to the eyewitness in that sketch? That sketch is not a dogman, right? What that thing is on that sketch, I don't know, but that's not a dogman. So do I believe it was a dogman? No. Not to mention, then we go into other things, right? According to eyewitnesses' reports, according to the stories, that thing was then killed that night. And the truck was brought in and they took it out.
Right.
According to the reports, it was something like 11 feet tall, 10, 11 feet tall.
Jeez. Yeah.
Right. So it must have been a massive, massive animal. Now, I do know dogmen that are 10 feet tall when standing up straight.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about a camper of 1980s, was it?
Yeah.
So it's an older camper. Today's campers, your average camper today, a large man kind of has to go sideways to go into the door.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because the doors are not that massive.
Right.
So a large 270, 300-pound man has to kind of go sideways a little bit to go into the door. And then probably inside, depending on the camper, right? But your average, hauled camper, you're probably gonna, if you're 6-7 foot tall, you're gonna have to probably duck down a little bit, right?
Exactly.
So how in the world did a 10, 11 foot creature manage to go in the front door without ripping it apart completely, shredding the front, not just the door? And the door, I believe, was probably fell off his hinges or probably was still on,
Mm-hmm.
but the whole door frame was still intact. How was it able to get in and fit inside without breaking the top off?
Exactly.
And how was it able to turn itself back around? Maybe not impossible, but by doing so, he must have broken everything inside, turning himself around with the young girl in hand to go back out the front door.
Right.
How did he do that?
All I can hear in the back of my head is me joking and going, "How dare you use critical thinking?"
Well, it's but it makes what I'm saying. How you're telling me that a 10, 11 foot creature, this is 1980s,
Right.
Something that had to weigh probably 700 pounds, maybe, give or take, right?
Uh-huh.
Go in through a door that today's campers, 2024, a full-grown man, 6 foot man, weighing 207 pounds, has to go in slightly sideways.
Yeah, I'm with you 110% on that one.
How in the hell did this thing manage to go in there without shredding that door, shredding the entrance,
Yeah.
getting inside? Because I know the little girl probably ran to the back.
Right.
How did it manage to walk in there and not rip the top off? How did he grab the little girl and turn himself around? This is a 10-foot thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe he can, because I've seen dogs turn themselves around. But in doing so, they pretty much break everything to their sides or push everything to the sides, right? To then get back out the door with the girl without breaking the front door to shreds.
Yep. I'm with you. It would have made more sense if the story had said, that this thing had torn that camper apart, like me trying to get into a bag of potato chips and getting frustrated.
Right, exactly.
Then he just, pulled a Santa Claus and went down the chimney and then popped back out, Yeah, I'm with you 110%.
So two things. Whatever they killed wasn't what went through the door,
Mm-hmm.
or they're lying altogether.
Right. Yep. I'm with you. I tend to lean towards it's not true. It's just a really good story, but I could be wrong, and that's I'm willing to say that.
There's too many ifs. So
Yeah.
to me, there's like If it's true, then what they killed wasn't what went through the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have multiple cryptids in the area, so they're blaming it on one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the other. But
yeah.
That's my take on the LBL.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, you mentioned something about them being around since the dawn of time or their origins or whatever. How, again, whatever you feel comfortable talking about as far as.
This is good, right? Because I tell this to people, and like you said, how dare I use critical thinking? So, when we look at Bigfoot,
Yep.
if we talk to any tribe in the United States of America, any country, any continent, there's going to be a Bigfoot type creature throughout the world.
Right.
Right? We have Sasquatch, we got Bigfoot, we got the Yeti, we got the Almas, we got, the Australias. I forgot the name of it. The Yowie, the Yeren from China, right? Every place has something that mimics a Bigfoot.
Right.
And every country, nation, tribe will tell you stories. So it's easy for me to believe that Bigfoot has been around since the beginning of time.
Yep.
Because you can find them in every corner of the known world. And you can talk to whoever, including somebody from China, and they will tell you about their Yerens. Right? I can go to the island of Australia, and somebody will talk to me about their so-called Bigfoots.
Right.
But I can't do the same thing for a Dogman.
Right.
If I go to certain tribes that are close to each other in the same state, some don't have Dogman in their oral history.
Right.
They got skinwalkers, which is interesting because the older tribe members have a superstition. So when you talk about Dogman, they automatically assume skinwalkers. So they don't want to talk about it. But it just happens that I've talked to younger generations who have family members who are elders and whatnot, who have seen Dogman physically, and who have or know about or have seen or know has a family who was a skinwalker. And they'll tell you off the bat. And I have emails, right, and message copyrights,
Right.
screenshots of these individuals telling me that Dogman is not a skinwalker, and that they do not have that in their history. What they saw is not in their history books. What they do have is skinwalkers. Australia's, which this is funny, and I don't want to get into if there's Dogman in Australia or not, right? But in Australia, the Aborigines do not have a written history of Dogman.
Right.
And other places do not have written history of Dogman. So, if I cannot find, like I find it with Bigfoot, a written history in every corner of this known world, could they possibly have been here since the beginning of time?
That would be difficult. I mean, it's possible, but it'd be difficult.
To me, it's highly difficult.
It's not following the same line as what we would see, like you said, with Sasquatch.
Right. So my case is, there have not been here a long time. Now, I am not saying, right, that Dogman is made by the government, right?
Yeah. Okay, that was going to be the next question.
Right. I am not saying that. Now, will I take that out of my sticky notes, my little black book of find out and see later on, right? Because the way I research is this. I read a book. The book is Dogman. I go chapter by chapter by chapter, paragraph by paragraph by paragraph. If I don't understand something, I just simply write it down on a piece of sticky notes, put it in that chapter, because what happens when you read a book and you do not understand what a paragraph meant? chances are, as you read it chapter by chapter, paragraph by paragraph, you'll eventually get the answer to that you asked about prior,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I wait and I let time dictate or tell me the answers to what I put to the side later on. And with Dogman is the same thing for me. In the beginning I had little sticky notes with, okay, what is this? Gotta find out this, but I leave it to the side. Because if I don't do that, I go into people call the wormhole, right? And then I lose track of what I'm researching because now my mind is focused on 1,000 things.
Yep.
I don't do that. I'm focused, right?
Yep.
And up until now, nature and Dogman, right, both, has told me or given me the answers to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that happens, I throw away that sticky note. And there'll be other sticky notes that are coming up. So I am not saying that they're government made, although I'm not taking it out of my mind. I do know about genetics. I do know about CRISPR and other things.
Right.
I do know DARPA is over 130 years ahead of its time.
Mm-hmm.
So what that means is that what your scientists today are doing now as a breakthrough, DARPA is 130 years ahead of that.
Right.
Can science today make a Dogman? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. Because, and again, I say that as a fact because I know people. Right.
Right.
Making a Dogman today is a fact. They can make a Dogman.
Mm-hmm.
Is the Dogman that we're seeing all theirs? I cannot deny or confirm that. I don't know. Because for me to deny or confirm that or be positive, I would have to kill one Dogman from every state, every corner, and then do a DNA test on them.
Exactly.
Right? I do know that there's a situation that has happened, and I want to go into details about this, right? Where biopsies have been made on an eyewitness, and what has come back would make you scratch your head.
Yeah, it usually does.
Okay. Which then tells me the sticky note, right?
Yeah.
But again, I will not say stuff like say stuff on the air because again, people will make stuff up and it's not beneficial for your
Right.
common joke. But where they come from, I haven't even really have put too much mind to it, right? Simply because I don't need to know.
Yeah.
Like throughout history, there's always been a fight about if the world and animals were created through evolution or through creation.
Oh yeah.
To this day, there's still a fight.
Oh yeah,
right?
and there always will be.
Right. But me knowing if our world and animals were here through evolution or creation bother me or hinder my research in studying what an elephant is?
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't.
Right.
So I don't care where Dogman came from. It doesn't hinder my studies into knowing that their phenotype is canine and their genotype is cat-like.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It doesn't hinder me from knowing when to go out and research for them and what behavior is this and what vocalization is this and what does it mean to do this or what does it mean to do that and what not to do with this and what this means. It doesn't hinder none of that.
Right.
So I've never put, wasted my energies into that because it's not important to me.
I agree. Those are always things that we can ponder on, but I agree. And what you said earlier really rings with what I try and get across to a lot of people who want to do research and they want to get into this and they want to be field investigators. If you collect evidence, let the evidence speak for itself. Don't try and tell a story on evidence that you don't understand. Just like you said with your sticky notes, you let it sit there. You come back to it whenever you see that, it kind of tells its own story.
Right.
Because we have people who will take certain evidentiary things and they will blow it completely out of proportion to fit the paradigm that they want it to fit, whether it be cryptozoological, biological, paranormal, UFO, whatever it is. Well, if you look at this just the right way, in the right light on a Sunday morning when the wind's blowing out of the west, it means this, So the evidence is evidence. It's always objective and never subjective. You have to let it tell its own story.
Right. And that's something like in the beginning, and I'll admit it, in the beginning, I used to read up on things, right? People say, the dog-headed people of ancient times and this and that, But what I realized is that what nature has been telling me does not correlate with none of the things that I've been reading.
Yep.
So I threw the books out.
Yep. It's kind of like, not just thinking outside the box, but throw the box away, forget you ever had a box, and just start all over from scratch.
Right.
Yeah. Because
and that's another thing that people don't realize. And I don't know if you were going to ask me that, right? But it's something that going with what we were saying. When we look at things that were written down in the 1700s, 1600s, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to realize this, and this is what people do not realize. We're taking ancient writings and using modern language to interpret it.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
Our grandparents spoke in a way that is completely different from how we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a couple of years ago. Especially if they're still, even if they're still alive, sometimes they'll, especially if you live out in the South or you are country folks, your grandparents speak in a way that their grandkids are saying, "Grandma, what does that even mean?" Right? And we've all heard our grandparents say, "Well, in our time, we used to call this and that."
Right.
Because their language throughout the years changes. Words are, as the dictionary, things are taken out and put in, turned around, or whatever. So in ancient times, it was a custom, and people can look this up. It was a custom to drawing things to describe a story.
Yes.
How do let's say you have a dog-like personality.
Mm-hmm.
How do I portray you in a picture to describe to others your characteristics, your the way you act in a picture? By drawing you as a human from the waist down and putting a dog face on you.
Yep. I've said this before. I agree with you. Yeah.
Right? Even the so-called saint that was a dog-headed, person before.
Yeah.
All that is they're describing who he was, his character, his flaws, before coming a saint.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're doing. Right? So when you have a tribe of dog-headed people, look at it from their viewpoint, from their perspective in that era, which simply they're trying to portray characteristics of a certain tribe. So if they were barbaric and if they were, dog-like in behaviors, then all that tribe are going to be painted as dog-headed people.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that they were actually dog-headed people. Then people will go, but, you have Marco Polo saw a tribe of, dog-headed people on an island. Did he go to the island? Did he talk to these individuals or, went around and studied them? No. Right. He saw them from afar. For those that don't know, maybe you don't, but the researcher that found the mountain gorillas for the first time, what was his description of mountain gorillas? His description was, and people can look this up, he had found a tribe of savage people.
Mm-hmm.
Today, we know that gorillas are neither savages nor are they people. So how in the world am I going to take literal, right? The description of something from that era.
Yep, you're right. You're
Again, they're using modern language, modern understanding to translate ancient ways of thinking.
exactly.
You can't do it that way.
Yep. You're right. You have to be able to understand the vernacular and the culture and everything of that time period to be able to really understand what was being said and what was trying to be presented. That'd be like, 1,000 years in the future, somebody reading a text from one of, your conversations, and what are these emoji things, and what does this one mean, and coming to, completely irrational conclusions over all of that. So
Right.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I tell you what, Rick, we are over 2 hours in. This was
I told you.
no, hey, I love it. I love what we're talking about. Matter of fact, if you'd like to, maybe here in a couple of weeks, we can bring you back and we can do a second episode on this one, and we can discuss this stuff a little bit further.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, fantastic. It has been great having you on. We'll go ahead and we'll wrap it up for tonight. I'm sure that everybody who listens to this one is really going to dig it, because I know I have, and I can't wait to have you back on to talk some more. So, Rick, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to go take care of other stuff with the family, and I hope you have a great night. And hey, anybody that's listening in, check us out on Facebook. We've got the Monstrous group, and we're of course on YouTube. If you would just like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so that you know whenever we're having our next show. We're trying to put shows out every week if we can, and we're hoping to have some more fantastic ones like we just had tonight with Rick. So everybody have a great night, and I will see you next week. Rick, hang around.
All right.
Whispers in the twilight, darkness and a breeze. Shadows move in silence, mystery in the trees. Secrets in the moon.